You're listening to a CNA podcast.
The sound of millions of people worldwide turning off or dimming their lights for just 1 hour. Earth Hour started in Sydney in 2007 and is now a global annual event held every March. Singapore is also in on the action. And at 8:30 p.m. on March 23rd, the event host, World Wildlife Fund, will launch the symbolic switch-off moment to raise awareness about climate change. But beyond this, how effective is Earth Hour? Does it translate to real action in the remaining 364 days a year? For more on the significance of Earth Hour, I'm joined by the CEO of WWF-Singapore, Vivek Kumar. Vivek, thank you very much for joining me on the Climate Conversations.
Thank you very much, Julie. As one of the frequent listeners to this program, it's such a joy and pleasure.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So Vivek, let's start with that symbolic switch-off moment. Can you tell us what are some of the highlights for you over the years when it comes to turning off the lights on some of the world's most iconic landmarks?
For me, the big moment was when I was at the Earth Hour Festival last year. And of course, we were all busy preparing for it and everything that is going on, performances, engaging people, etc. And that at 8:30 p.m., when the landmarks in Singapore began to go dark one by one, it was that amazing feeling where you begin to realize you are not alone, that we are, after all, a community together, that it matters to us, and that we are willing to take action together. I think to me that is the beauty of Earth Hour as a movement that straddles the whole globe.
Yeah, and it could be quite a spectacle, from London Eye in Britain to Eiffel Tower in France and Colosseum in Italy just plunging into darkness.
Yes, absolutely. And the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore and the Gardens by the Bay and all these iconic landmarks. And this year, we will also have the whole Orchard Road belt going dark at that hour. So we are hoping more of our listeners will be there on the Saturday of 23rd of March to take part on some of the educational programs and to also be part of this moment, which actually is quite magical when you are there.
Okay, well, for those of us who are unfamiliar with Earth Hour, could you just give us a brief history of the movement?
Indeed, it is started as a symbolic gesture, started in 2007 from the Sydney Harbour. And the whole idea was for the community to come together and signal that climate change is important to us. And since then, obviously, the movement has spread far and wide. Last year, we had millions of our supporters taking part in Earth Hour in 192 countries around the world. So I would say this is perhaps a truly global grassroots movement that spans the whole globe. What Earth Hour does, it allows us to bring together two components, educate our supporters around the world to make sure they understand what are the interdependencies. And more important than the Earth Hour itself, that they can then take actions based on scientific evidence and scientific facts for the rest of the year.
All right, so talk to us about what's in store for Singapore this year.
So when the members in Singapore come to the Earth Hour Festival, they will realize there are three different educational booths. One is focused on climate and sustainability. The second is focused on nature and biodiversity. And the third is around community and people engagement. And it didn't happen by accident. We did a survey among Singaporeans where we asked them what worries them about the whole planet and what is it that really want to put their focus on. So the first was climate and sustainability. And the work that we do there is around circular economy, around making sure that businesses are on sustainable supply chain, sustainable sourcing, and also sustainable consumption. Some of that they will see there at the festival. The second is around nature and biodiversity. And that is a real concern. The third is around community engagement. One of the programs that we launched globally was the Our Bank last year. And this year we are launching it in Singapore as well. And the way Our Bank works is across the areas of our daily lives as individuals, what is it that we can do to contribute that hour back to the planet? And that is throughout the whole year. So for example, in my case, I have switched to using pre-loved clothing. Or when we are consuming the food, how can we go light on meat? How can we go light on things that have been flown in from much farther, etc.? That is where Our Bank provides that platform where individuals can be involved and taking inspiration from the 1 hour of switch off, they can actually go ahead and do these for the rest of the year as well.
Give us some examples of how some cities take their commitment to the cause beyond the 60-minute event.
In Singapore, what we do is a whole range of programs. So, for example, we have a program called Asia Sustainable Finance Initiative, which helps the finance professionals evolve and become sustainable finance professionals. These are paid courses together with the Institute of Banking and Finance. They are funded as well. And we have had almost 25,000 professionals that have gone through it. So they have greater awareness of the issues, the challenges, what is it that they can do about it. Similarly, for nature and biodiversity, we work on marine conservation. So we have actually worked on a program called Coral Triangle Program, which is to protect the coral reefs in our region. We are also working on coral restoration, and we get the community involved there as citizen scientists. The third, which is one of the big contributors to global deforestation and the loss of biodiversity, is illegal wildlife trade. And we being one of the hubs for transportation, obviously we know this and it has appeared in news so many times that so much of shipments pass through us. But it is also on the platforms that we consume, and we must stop that. So this is where we work with the community. We have trained almost 400 volunteers who go through the e-commerce platforms. They're able to spot the listings. We are able to report them to the platforms. They take action to take those down. And if it doesn't work, obviously we work very closely with National Parks Board as well. And I'm glad to say that our volunteers have taken down more than 15,000 of those listings. So I can safely say that the Earth Hour movement makes it much easier for people to be involved in something where they can get exposed to this range of initiatives, and then they can pick and choose what they're most passionate about, and then they get more deeply involved there. But if we didn't have a platform like Earth Hour, we will lose that critical opportunity to engage them and to raise awareness.
Understand. So Vivek, how does WWF then measure the effectiveness of these efforts?
All the programs, we have very clear KPIs for those in terms of the impact that they must create. We share those with our donors and with our supporters on a quarterly basis, where we'll be sending out our impact newsletters to them, but also in our annual report, of course, where we track all these things that are going on. But more importantly, we can't do it alone, and that's something that WWF recognizes, and therefore our motto is Together Possible.
Okay. So how does WWF-Singapore choose who to work with? How do you ensure that there is no greenwashing involved? How do you choose them?
Yeah, it is a very stringent process. It is very important that we are looking at partners very carefully because of a couple of factors. One, as you rightly pointed out, is the greenwashing effort. But the second also is because we realize that it is not just the sponsorships, etc. It is also about how we can leverage on each other's strengths in order to scale up the impact that we can make. We have access to databases. We go through our due diligence process. We have global committees. We have committee within the country as well, in order to go through the potential partners very stringently. We often say no to partnerships as well, which is something that our pandas are not distressed by. They take pride in it because they know that the organization stands for something, and we will walk away from partnerships that do not meet that vision and the objective. The partners that we do choose, they share our DNA, they share our belief, and then those partnerships grow. Epson is a great example because the coral reef program that I shared with you, for the last 2 to 3 years, we have been working with Epson in order to do the planting of the coral fragments, etc., so we can revive them around the region, to do community engagement. And then for Earth Hour, now that work has now evolved into they coming on board as our first international sponsor for Earth Hour, something that WWF has never done before. But because we have belief in each other now, because of the work we are doing on the ground, they have come on board. And when listeners will come to the Earth Hour Festival, they will also come to a booth where they are doing the edutainment effort around how do they actually engage in circular economy? What do you do with the ink cartridges? What do you do with the printers that no longer work, etc.? So that is how we work. We work on partnerships that can create impact, and then those that we can scale up, and that they are not short-term, once-off partnerships.
Interesting. But these are large-scale events we're talking about, and there are worries that it may contribute to carbon footprint or environmental impact. So how do you plan to mitigate them?
That's a great question. We must hold ourselves accountable to the same yardsticks that we advocate. So when we organize these events, we pay a lot of attention to the amount of distance people will have to travel. We choose venues that are usually quite accessible through public transportation. This year, for example, Visma Atria is the partner. They are hosting us. Obviously, it's right next to the Orchard MRT, so people don't have to create a lot of carbon footprint when they're coming over. We try to keep the use of single-use plastics to a minimum. And of course, much of what is being done there is recycle. But more importantly, it is the partnerships behind that. So we have got the schools that are part of the Eco Schools program, the WWF Eco School program. We are present in some 136 schools, and they are educators and the students that we work with. They are the ones coming on board. They are the ones educating the community. They are the ones who are performing. So it's really an event for the community, by our volunteers and by people who are part of the program.
Okay. And Vivek, a big thing for critics of Earth Hour is that the 1 hour event is just a candlelit party to let our conscience off the hook. I mean, what do you say to that?
It is a risk we must always be aware of. I would not write it off at all. It is very critical that all the other programs that we do, when people are coming for that, for them to really be involved in that. Let them go and take part in a booth, learn something new, donate an hour at the very least to the hour bank so they know that they're committing to eating a meatless Monday or not driving a day or doing something. I think that's very important. And therefore, the critics are right. And it is in our hands, not just WWF, but all of us as a community to say, look, this can help raise awareness. This can help us educate. But then what we do after that is in our hands. And we all have to play our part.
There are some environmentalists also point to Earth Hour's focus on individual behavior. You know, when a small number of fossil fuel companies, as we know, have emitted so much, the vast majority of carbon emissions. How do you respond to people who say the exercise is releasing these fossil fuel companies and politicians from their responsibility to deal with climate change?
It's a great question. It is very important that we are not looking at it only on Earth Hour, but we are looking at it holistically. On the one hand, I'm aware of the work that my colleagues do in policy and advocacy, lead tremendous efforts at different conference of parties in order to make sure that nature is in the room. The protection of nature is a priority. That is something that people are talking about. Whether it is the plastics treaty, whether it is the deep sea mining, whether it is the biodiversity convention, we are bringing the science-based knowledge and we are mobilizing the community to do the right thing. But we also have to always recognize that countries and businesses, for them, the biggest stakeholder is the people. We can choose to convey to them that, look, policymakers, this matters to us. It is one of the top 3 things for us as a community that you must pay attention to. Businesses, you must stick to a certain way of looking after the planet and nature as well if you want our business, for us to come and buy things from you. And that is where we can work hand in hand in order to create lasting impact. The second part is, while Earth Hour started, and I sometimes myself also forget, it's less than 20 years since the movement has started. But what we did in Singapore last year was something unique and something new. We also created something called the Earth Hour Summit. We did it for the first time at Marina Bay Sands. We were not so sure how people react, but our vision was beyond the hour. We want to bring the science, policy, and practice of climate change in one room, get people to come together and discuss it openly. And it was a closed-door Chatham House at scale, I guess, for more than 400 C-suite leaders. And we were very pleased with the response. We had the room full of policymakers, of academia, and of business leaders who were willing to openly talk about the challenges they are facing. And look, this is a new journey for all of us. The world has seen the change in climate in the last 10 years that perhaps no other decade has seen before. So obviously we are all learning, and we are not quick to judge. We are quick to partner. We are quick to help each other. We are quick to sharing. We are doing this year's Earth Hour Summit as well. And this year, we are focusing on climate and nature, on how do we bring this together, and then the senior leaders who are in the room, what are they doing and what more we all must do.
So Vivek, this is a global movement. And for countries and cities where, let's say, electrical outages are common, perhaps Earth Hour isn't so relevant. I mean, what's the messaging for these places?
You're absolutely right. When there is a movement that is celebrated in 192 countries, many of them do indeed face challenges with access to energy, with access to electricity, etc. And yet, we must ask ourselves the question, why do they still take part in it? Why do they still light up a candle when maybe there is no electricity to light up their homes? My sense is that the reason they are doing it is because they are all seeing the impact of climate change on their homes, on their lives, on their livelihoods, in terms of the sea that often surrounds them, in terms of the quality of soil that they have. Therefore, climate to them is not just about electricity, it is holistic. And these communities are extremely worried about what it is doing to them, their families, their livelihoods, and therefore they are coming together and they're sending us a signal that as a very diverse mix of countries and cities, which all have very different carbon footprints, we must do our part, not just for ourselves here, but maybe for someone who is based in an underdeveloped country who is facing the brunt of that because it's a global challenge, it's not a city-specific challenge.
Okay, so Vivek, before I let you go, and for those of our listeners who are wondering, what can I do? How can I give back my hour? Could you just give us some ideas of small acts that people or businesses can do that can make a difference?
Fantastic. The first thing about the hour is I really hope the community will come on the 23rd of March and really engage in the 23 activities and performances we have planned, because those will give some more ideas and inspirations. For businesses, I will have perhaps 3 suggestions. The first is, and we called upon all the people in the room and beyond to do it last year at the Earth Summit, to say, can we bring our temperatures to 25 degrees? As the minimum that we set for ourselves. And that is a low-hanging fruit that will have a clear impact on people. The second is, as businesses begin to pay attention to at least tracking and monitoring what we are doing through the year. It could be energy-efficient appliances that they employ. It could be other ways of making sure that they're reducing their carbon footprint. Once they begin to track and monitor it, I think avenues will open up. The third is, take part in learning, take part in ecosystems. If you're in doubt, reach out to people like us or other organizations that are around. Singapore has a green plan. We are very blessed to be in a country that takes this seriously. So be engaged, and we are all here to help each other. So that's for the businesses. For individuals, it is perhaps a little bit different. We must not think of it with gloom and doom. And I know me and my team often fall into that. We must choose hope. And that means that when we take a smaller step, we must say, look, collectively, if we all take these smaller steps, for example, going meat light, eating more fruits and vegetables, taking more public transportation, walking a bit more, it's good for our health as well, as well as spending more time with nature. If we begin to love nature, we will value nature and we will care for it. If it is not something that we experience, it will not matter to us. And I'll give one thing that I experience for myself. It is on a hot day when I'm in the CBD area, surrounded by concrete and surrounded by buildings. It is how my body reacts to heat when I'm walking there. To if I just walk away a little bit, I go away a little bit into one of our very green zones, one of our parks, how my body reacts with that greenery around us. That will show us the value of nature and why we must protect it.
There's so much we can do. Thank you very much, Vivek, for coming in today and sharing your insight with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Julie. It has been a pleasure.
A big thanks to Vivek and to all of you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And don't forget to subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple so you know when the new episode drops. The team behind this podcast is Tiffany Yang, Cyan Nguyen, Joanne Chan, and Crispina Robert. And I'm Julie Yoo, signing off.